Hi everybody, and welcome to the first video of another one of the Kimberbell square pillow series, and this one's called Life is Better in Full Bloom. So this one came out about the 1st of March. I'm starting these videos on the 23rd of March, so I was trying to get them done before spring, but I didn't quite make it. So anyway, we're going to be working on some spring things, and I'm so glad to be seeing some spring flowers and some pretty spring colors and yellows and blues. So anyway, this is a very cute pillow. It's one of the 22 by 22 inch pillows. Now you get this design directly from Kimberbell, and it's in their download section on the kimberbell.com website. I am going to, in the description on YouTube and on Facebook, I will put the affiliate link, our affiliate link in there so that you can click through the affiliate link. And that's nice. It just gives our store, a little Shield Sewing Center, a little kickback when you buy your designs from Kimberbell. So they kind of give us a little help, and we have what they call an affiliate link. So I'll put that in the description on YouTube and also in the comments and description on Facebook. And you can also get some quilting designs. So if you have quilting designs already, you don't have to buy any more. There is a little bundle deal for this pillow yet. And the bundle is, I think, let's see, there's only 3 designs. It's Spring 2, Geometric 8, and then there's a Border Spring 2. So there's only 3 designs in the in those. So I went ahead and bought those little designs just because I wanted to make it the way they show it in the pictures. And so I went ahead and did that. And then that also can be purchased through the affiliate link. So I will go ahead and put that in the description and also in the comments, or the description of the comments on Facebook. Okay, so we're going to talk first about getting ready to do this pillow. And there's only about 10 blocks in here. Plus there was a couple of filler blocks. So there wasn't a ton of cutting on this, which was really nice. And so let's just talk a little bit about the cutting. We've done this before, so a lot of you are a little bit familiar with how they do this. So what I have done is I'm going to turn over to page 5. So page 5 shows the fabrics that you need for the quilt, or for the pillow top. And there's about 23, so there's quite a few for this one. And what I do, as you can see, is I have numbered them 1 through 23 to help me find them. And then what I do is when I pull out my fabrics, and I just pulled fabrics from my stash. They have some new fabrics that are used in this pillow. If you were buying a kit, you can get the kit for it. I just didn't want to wait for the kit, and I had a lot of fabric, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try to pull it out of my own stash. So that's what I did. Found something similar in a similar color, and I just numbered these then on this page. This is in page 5 in the book, or actually my the instruction booklet. So that'll come down in the download, and I like to use my little binder, like a little comb binder, and bind it like the book. So 1 through 23, there was that many fabrics in it. And then what I do then is like page 7 and 8 actually is going to be the little diagrams about how to cut them. So I like to then transfer the numbers over here to correlate with my list. So then I know that I'm getting them cut out of the correct fabrics. So I did my cutting, and I know a lot of you have done these before, so that's pretty self-explanatory once you kind of get started. And it's a little overwhelming because there's a lot of fabrics, but once you kind of get them figured out, it's pretty easy. There aren't many embellishments in this one, so there was a little bit of silver leather, embroidery leather, so I had a piece of that for it's the watering can. It's actually the first block we're going to do. There's a pink grapefruit embroidery felt, so I have a pink felt. And then you need some Flexi Foam is the other thing you kind of need. And it's that soft foam. And you can buy that. I buy the Pellon brand at Joann's, and then Kimberbell also has their own. It's Flexi Foam. So it's like a foam. It's got like a little tricot coating on it, and it's foamy. So I'll show that to you here in a minute when we get the other kit out. Okay, but what they tell you to do first in these first couple of pages is basically to, get your stabilizers together. And what we're going to be using for stabilizer, we're going to quilt this in the hoop. So I am going to be using no-show mesh stabilizer for the entire pillow. So I have that in my hoop, and then what it tells you to do is kind of get your baggies, some baggies started, so that when you get your fabrics cut, you can pull the parts that you need for each block and put them in a baggie and mark it by name. So that's what I've done here. So here's my first couple of bags that we're going to be doing tonight. I'm going to do this pillow in like 5 videos. So the first video will be the watering can block and the 3 pieced roses blocks and the leaves. So that's the first ones I did. So you can see that I have my 3 roses and my leaves in here, okay, and all the different pieces I needed. And then here's my watering can pieces. And then the other pieces I need are going to be there's some filler blocks. So I have a little baggie. I put my filler blocks in. Here's one for the birdhouse, one for the butterfly, and so on. So I just kind of put them in the little bags as I found all the pieces for them. And I'll show you the graph on here. So this is all my little baggies marked with my names of my blocks. Okay, so we're going to use the first 2 we're going to use are the watering can and the roses. Then you're also going to need some backing. So this is my backing, and then these are my flanges, and these are my borders. So the one thing I do like to do, I do not cut my borders and flanges to the size they say to. I like to leave them the width of my fabric. So these are, I cut 2 1.5-inch strips for my borders that are the width of the fabric. Okay, so they're 1.5 inches by width of fabric, because I can make my 4 borders out of these 2 strips. And then I can cut them down so that they are exactly the right size. If you cut them to the size they say, you might possibly be short. I also did the same thing for my flanges. So I cut mine to 2 strips that are 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. You can see it's folded, and here's the ends. Okay, so that's how I cut my borders and flanges. I don't like to cut them to the size they say. So I'll show you that on the graph here. So these are my backings and my flange and border fabrics. So I'm going to put those back in the box. And if you look here on page, I think it's on page, so on page 6, it tells you with those borders and flanges to cut your borders like 1.5 by 16.5 and 1.5 by 18.5. And I don't do that. I cut 2 pieces that are 1.5 by the width of my fabric. So I can accommodate those 4 pieces out of those 2 long strips. Okay. And the same thing with the flanges. 2.5, they say to do them 2.5 by 18.5 and 2.5 by 22.5. And I do the same thing. I cut them 2.5 by the width of the fabric. So that way I can cut them down and I know they're going to be the right size. Okay. So that's one difference that I do when I cut my fabrics. The rest of the fabrics I cut as they say. So in these little, diagrams here, it tells you how big to cut each one, and I've got them marked by the color they were, and I just cut the pieces that they told me to do. So in order to put them in your little baggies, if you look at the chart then back on page 5, for each fabric, it tells you what piece this is. So like the first piece is the mushrooms background, and the second piece was the pinwheels background. So it tells you what those are and what block they go to. Okay, so then you can just go down your list and you can say, okay, well, this one goes with my mushrooms, and I just take my little pieces of paper and write watering can, mushrooms, so on, okay, roses or whatever, and then I just lay the fabrics as I go down the list. I just lay the fabrics in the right pile and then put them in the little baggie. Okay, so sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I just leave them by number and I pull them as I go. But this didn't have too many blocks, so I just went ahead and put them in the little baggies by the block that I needed. Okay, so that's one of the things you need to do is get your cutting done. And a lot of you have cut these before. Now, the other thing you're going to want is on the ones that say there for the backgrounds. Let me pull this out for the watering can. The ones that say background on them, you want them to be, you also want to cut a piece of shape flex, you know, the SF101 or the Kimberbell equivalent, whichever you have. I have shape flex. So, and you want to adhere that to the back of your fabric. So that's what this little piece is right here. You can probably see the edge of it. And this is the front of my fabric. So I am going to press this before we start the video, to start the sewing part anyway. So this is my background. So I have, all my backgrounds have a piece of the shape flex on the back. Now I think I might have a couple of other pieces in here that I stuck a piece of shape flex on because they were very light colored and they were going over a stronger color. So I'll talk to you about that as we're going. But then, so all of your backgrounds need to have a piece of shape flex on the back, okay? And I do that as I'm cutting. I actually just do that right as I'm cutting. I iron them right on, and then I can put them in the baggies with the shape flex already ready, okay? Let's see. Then the list of colors that you will need are down on the bottom of page 6. So what I did is I went through, and what I do when I pick my colors is I get my fabric out and I lay the fabrics out so I can get my pinks to kind of match my pinks, and the orange or the brown. You know, if there's these colors in there, I like to take my fabric and I just match the colors to my fabrics, okay? I am using the Brother Pace Setter Pro thread. And so I will give you this list that I am using for mine, and I'll put that also in the comments with the other things that I've already talked about. Put those in the comments or in the description under the video on YouTube, okay? Now, the one thing I'm going to try, and I've never tried this before, so you guys and I are going to try this together, okay? I am going to try, I've always wanted to try this, and I haven't had any, and my friend Judy had some today. So I'm going to try this water-soluble thread in my bobbin to do the fringe. So we're going to give that a whirl tonight and see if it works, okay? So I got some water-soluble thread. It doesn't really tell you what brand. I have been told that a lot of people use Madeira. Now, the one that I've always used and been able to get really easy is called Vanish. And it is by Superior Threads, and the other is a Madeira. So I'm going to try to get the Madeira. I think we can get that at the store, and I'm going to try to have that at the store so we have some water-soluble thread, okay, to put in your bobbin. So we're going to try this tonight and see how it works, because this first block is going to have some fringe in it. So we'll try it out. Okay. So I've got all my threads pulled, and I'll tell you what colors I'm using here, and I will post this list and type it out for you because it's just kind of hard to see here. But I'll tell you what colors I'm using as we go along, okay? And I've got my no-show mesh stabilizer ready. I've got my embroidery designs ready. And like I showed you a little bit ago, there's the chart for the embroidery designs. It's kind of in the back. It's on page 37, and it tells you which one that they used, and then they also give you a color. So I'm going to do most of mine. I think I'm going to quilt most of mine in white, but I noticed that they did do a couple of the blocks in a different color. So we may do that because I see some of the filler blocks are quilted in a color. So we may do that. And then, yeah, it's all filler blocks. So we'll probably do those in a color. And then they did some colors on the borders, okay, because they kind of give you an idea. But I think I'm going to quilt most of my blocks in white. Okay, and it doesn't give you the white color in the list of colors over here on page 6, but I'll just tell you that I'm using white to quilt. And then when they talk about a different color, I'll do some of those filler blocks in a different color. So, okay. So let's see. So we got everything cut. I've got everything cut. I did wind my water-soluble thread on my bobbin here, so I've got that ready to go for the fringing. And what they do is they have done a special type of digitizing for the fringe so that it stops, so you can put in your water-soluble thread and you can remove the water-soluble thread, because you do have to have a trapping stitch to hold it in place. So we're going to give this a whirl. I've never tried it, so we're going to try it together. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started sewing. So the next step is going to be I'm going to look at my design here, and this is the watering can. And let's go get the watering can. And then this one says, if you're doing the block by block quilting, which I'm going to, oh, and you'll also need your batting. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the batting. So you do need batting for the quilting. And I have, I'm not sure if this is Hobbs. I had a couple of other scraps of fabric or batting. So this might not be Hobbs. It might be another brand. But this is a cotton batting also. Cotton or cotton poly blend is good for this. So this is just, I just use scraps. I do not cut my batting. So when you buy the Quilting Designs, it always tells you to cut your batting at certain sizes, and it's just not worth the time to cut all those other squares because you still have to trim them down. So I just use chunks of batting and I just trim it. I just hold it up there and I trim it off. So that's what I just got a chunk of batting here. So okay, so let's take a look here. What else? So it says that we need on this, I got all my pieces over here, so I'm going to get these pieces ready to go, and then I'm going to get we're going to do the little flowers later, so I'll put those aside. And it says that we need to get, I'm going to use the designs that they said for the quilting. So we need to bring the quilting design in first, because we're going to bring that in first. So I'll be bringing this over. Okay. And I am going to hit embroidery on my machine, go to my stick, and I'm going to go to my quilting. And this, they said they use spring 2. So give me a second. I was going to highlight that so I could see it. So I highlight things that I know are important. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Kimberbell quilting, and it's called Spring 2. So we're going to go down to the S's and get Spring 2. I just have all of my quilting designs on here, so there's just a lot. And sorry, it takes me a minute to scroll through them, but I just put them all on here. So Spring 2 is what this one is. So we're going to go Spring 2. And this first block is going to finish 6 by 6. So it's going to end up being 6.5 by 6.5. So for those of you with smaller machines, I am going to be using an 8 by 8 hoop because the design for the quilting is going to be 6.5 by 6.5. Now I also did a video on how to remove some of those tack down lines so that those of you with a 6 by 10 hoop can still do the quilting in the hoop on these bigger blocks. So I will also put a link to that video. So if you have just a little bit of software, you can easily take that line out and you'll be able to do it in a 6 by 10. I am going to be using an 8 by 8 hoop for this block. Okay. So let's see. Let's go ahead and get the embroidery designs, and these are block by block. And then I need the 6 by 6. So this was Spring 2. Let's see, 6 by 6. Oh, this one's cute. It's got a little watering can on it. So 4 by 4, 4 by 8, 4 by 12. Let's see. Oh, here's a 6 by 6. So we'll get this one. Has a little butterfly on it and the little watering cane. That's very cute. So we're going to hit set. And then I'm going to need my design. So the design is watering can. So I'm going to hit the add button. It's right down here. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's right here. I'm going to go back to my stick and to Life is Better in Full Bloom. And then we're going to go to the embroidery files, and I'm using PES because I've got a brother machine. And then we're going to go to the, where is it here? It's the watering can. Let's see, here it is at the bottom, 5 by 7 watering can. So this one's going to have a lot of fun stuff in it. It's going to have, it has fringe, and we're going to do some chenilling. So it's going to have some really fun stuff. And then we're going to do a little applique. So that'll be really fun. All right, so I've got that in here, and it says in the instructions, align the block embroidery file with the quilting design file so that both files are centered. So they come up automatically in our machines centered. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this just where it is, and the quilting design just where it is. So I'm going to hit set. And you can see that the bottom of the little watering can is basically about down where we're going to have our seam allowance, okay? And it's pretty much fills the block there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit embroidery. So the first thing that's going to sew will be our quilting line. So we're going to start out. So well, the one thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the video for just a moment because I need to go press my block. And I was looking at something and it said something about fusible backing. I was trying to see what that was all about. It says fusible backing on the back of the design. So I'm just reading a little bit because I didn't get everything. Iron fusible backing to the wrong side of the background fabric and to the only one piece of each of the flowers. Oh, so that is one of the things that they've said. So right here, if you can see this picture right here, it says fusible backing. So in other words, we need to put a piece of shape flex. They put a little piece of shape flex on the back of one of the small pieces for the applique. Not sure where my pieces went here. Just a minute. But it looks like they're doing that just to give it a little bit more body, because that is going to be the base of our chenilling. So they just took a little piece of shape flex and put it on the back of one of these little pieces. There's 4 of each one of these. And they put a piece on the back of each one. So I'm going to do that also. I'll turn the camera off and do that also. I hadn't read that before. It was over here on page 10 in the book. So it's like right here. And they just have you do one of each color. So there's a yellow one, a pink one, and a blue one. Okay, so I'm going to do that also. And then I'm going to I've already got it on my background fabric. And then I'm going to press this out so it's flat. Okay, so I'll be right back after I do that. Okay, so I think we're all set here. Let me get my instructions moved over. And I have my hoop here. This is my 8x8 again. So again, I will give you the link to that video if you need to be able to take those lines out if you only have a 6x10 hoop, because you can get it to work. It isn't that hard to do. So, and I've got the shape flex on the back of the main body, and I do that always as I just cut my fabrics. But then they asked you to put it on the backs of one of the little pieces. Okay, so these are going to be our fringe piece, or not fringe, but chenille pieces, and these are going to be the applique piece. Okay, so those are all done. I've got my shape flex on the back of that. Here's my rest of my pieces. I'll lay those over here. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do then, and this is the way all of the quilting designs go. The first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead. I've got just plain white, the regular white bobbin thread in my bobbin, and I'm going to use white embroidery thread in the needle, and then I'm going to use oops, here has to think here, and I'm going to be using my shape or my no-show mesh in the hoop. I have a number 11 embroidery needle in my machine. And so all of the quilting is the same. So we've done quite a few of these quilting things. So hopefully you kind of remember. The first step of all of the quilting designs is going to be a placement line for the batting. So the first thing we're going to stitch out is going to be the placement line for the batting. And then I'm going to get my chunk of batting, because you know I don't like to have to cut them. I'm going to get my chunk of batting here. Sorry, I off the camera. I'm going to get my chunk of batting ready, and then we're going to put this up here so that I can tack my batting down. And I'm not sure. I think I've got some hobs over here. I'm going to go grab my hobs. I like that kind of batting better. That's my favorite batting. Hobs is a little bit fluffier, and it makes, you can see the hob. This is my hobs. The other one was a different kind of batting I've been using. But this, I like this because it's just a little bit loftier, and it makes the stitching kind of, you know, you notice it more. I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and use my hobs. This is hobs 80-20. I'm going to lay my batting down. This is just a chunk. Okay. And then the second step in all of the embroidery designs is going to be the tack down line for the batting. And it's going to go around it, and then we will trim the batting close to the stitches. So we're going to do the quilting before we start doing the actual design. And then when we sew this together, see, it's already quilted then. So you can do this, you know, the old-fashioned way if you don't want to quilt it in advance. Again, if you don't want to buy the quilting designs that they made for this design, just use whatever you have. They will be just fine. I just happened to buy the ones I thought they were cute, so I just bought them when I bought my design. And they do have a little bundle deal on them, at least for a little while. So, all right, so there is our tack down line for our batting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my double curved Ginger scissors. These are 6-inch double curved scissors that I like to use for trimming. And I'm going to trim around making sure my camera is working. I'm going to trim around my batting close to the stitching. I'll lay this on the floor and get it out of the way for now. So I'm going to go all the way around. Again, I have my 8x8 hoop in. So hopefully most of you have the little bit larger hoops. And if you have to do it in the smaller one, like I said, I will link that video so to show you how to take out those lines, and it will work fine in the 6x10 hoop. Okay, so the third step in all of the quilting designs is going to be the placement line for the backing fabric. So we're going to do the placement line. This is one of the lines, if you have the smaller hoop, that would be causing your problem because it's going to be 6.5 inches square, okay? And that's what causes the problem. So that's why I chose my 8x8 hoop for this block. This is going to give me my placement line. I found some really cute fabric. I thought it wasn't what they had. I got this at Joann's, I think, but isn't that cute with the little bumblebees and the little the ladybugs on it? Okay, so and it's going to go right in the, I'm going to try to center it as best I can. Okay, and then step number 4 is always going to be the tack down line for your fabric. And this again is one of those lines that you would be removing if you have a smaller hoop, and then it would allow you to get this in with the batting. You just would have to tape your fabric down. Instead of it sewn down like this, you would just put some tape around the outside edges and it will work just fine because I've done it that way. Okay, so there is our tack down line for the fabric. So that now number 5 in all of the designs, step number 5 is going to be the actual quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. This is going to be the quilting. We're going to be doing our applique on top of the quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to let it run for a minute, and then I'll just pause the camera so while it's sewing, because it takes a few minutes to sew, and then I will be back and we'll start the appliques. Okay, so I got my quilting done, and as you can see with my Hobbs Batty, you can nicely see the quilting design in there. That's why I like that 80-20, because it's a little loftier and it just makes the, you know, it just pops up a little bit more, and I really like it because you can see it, especially when you put them together, you can really see it. Okay, so actually there's no applique first. The first color is actually going to be the little stems of the flowers that we're going to be making with the chenille. So I'm going to use, these are the, I'm going to use a darker green for this one. So this is step number 2 right here on page 10, and it's the stitch the flowers 1, 2, and 3 stems and leaves, and these are going to be the darker green. So I picked one called 1087 Palmetto. It's kind of a olivey green. It's a real pretty green, and then I've got a lighter version of it for some of the leaves too. So we're going to go ahead and get our stems and leaves going here. And then we get to go on, and we're going to put the little watering can down first. So that'll be the next, I think there's 2 sets of leaves, and then we'll do the watering can. All right, we're going to get our leaves and stems going, and then we will get ready for applique. Okay, so there's our first 3 stems. And there's going to be one more set of stems and leaves, and that one's going to be done in the lighter green. And my lighter green is sort of in the same family, but it's just a little lighter. And this one's called Fresh Green. So it's 027 Fresh Green. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the needle. And we're going to do the leaves, and this is step number 3 in the instructions. Get that in there, and we'll do these leaves, and then we finally get to do our watering can. Okay, so we got our 3 darker leaves and stems and then 1 lighter one. And now we're going to go ahead and start the applique. So this is going to be the watering can. We're going to do that in that silver embroidery leather. And I'm going to put in a gray, and they call for kind of a medium gray. So this is called medium cool gray, and it's 0218. So I just picked a little bit darker gray because you want to be able to see it on the silver leather, because they're going to do some decorative stitches. So we're just going to put that in and start out right with that because it's going to make a little outline. And then the next step is going to be our placement line for the embroidery leather. Let me get my leather here. And this is the embroidery leather, the silver. It's kind of white on the back, so when we go to trim it, I'll show you what I do with the trimming. This is really going to be cute. This one has really cute flowers on it. And actually quite a few of these designs in this one have like fringe and stuff in them. So that's why I thought, I'm going to try that water-soluble bobbin thread. So we'll see, or the water-soluble thread. So in the bobbin. So we're going to give it a whirl and see what happens. All right. So there's our placement line for our watering can. Okay, so I'm going to lay this in. I think it needs to go this way. Make sure everything's covered. And if you want to tape this down, you can. I normally just hold it. I'm going to leave my same color thread in there. Now this is going to be raw edge applique, so we're not going to have a covering stitch. So that's why they recommended using a darker gray so that it shows just a little bit as an outline. And we're going to just be trimming up to it. Now this has a white background, so when I go to trim, I'll show you how I try to avoid showing as much of the white as possible. Sometimes it shows a little bit, and I try to just hold the scissors horizontal enough that I get a nice even trim. So take your time trimming the leather. So it's doing the outline. It's going to do like a triple stitch on here. I'm just holding this down. My embroidery leather was a little bit curly, so I'm just holding it down until it gets over to the side here. There we go. Looks good. So that's really cute. I love their embroidery leather. It's soft, and it really makes everything shiny and pretty. All right. So now we're going to trim close to the stitches. And it says trim as desired. So you're going to leave just a little teeny bit of edge. You don't want to get too close to the stitches because then you could, your stitches could come out of your leather. So I usually leave just a small amount of space. But when we go to, a second, this is one of my hoops that's kind of tight. So a second here. There we go. When I go to trim this, I want to make sure that I kind of take my scissors, and the other kind of scissors you can use for this trimming are those little micro tip scissors. Those work really well. I'm not sure where they are, so that's why I'm going to use these. But I kind of see how I'm tipping my scissors so they're more horizontal. That will help me stay so that the white doesn't show so much on that, because there's a white background, as you can see, and I don't want that white really showing on the edge. So I'm going to try to keep my scissors as I'm going to hold them back towards me so that they're more up and down. And then give me just a second here. Here we go. So I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch around so that there's just a little, a little lip there. And that way the stitches won't pull through my leather. I was very anxious to start this pillow. But you know, this time of year when we hit the spring, you know, we kind of have to do our taxes and some stuff like that. So I had my taxes to do and my dad's taxes to do. So I had to get that done before I could start this because I knew that I wouldn't want to stop once I started. So I got all the icky stuff done first. So my taxes are done. Dad's taxes are done. All right. So let's go around this one. Whoops. It takes a little bit to do the trimming, but I wanted to leave this on camera so you could see me trimming. And I'm trying to keep my scissors kind of tipped up so I don't get that little white edge as much as possible. Just have to kind of swing your hoop around. And these are pretty sharp scissors. I like these scissors because they're pretty sharp. And then we're going to have to trim out the inside, also the inside of that, the little handle over here. So we're going to go around this curve. I normally hold them more flat, but with this leather, this is the way it works for me. So you'll just have to kind of figure out what works for you the best. Like I said, those microtip scissors also work because they are mine have a curved blade, but I can also tip them up as well. So that's another option for you if that works better. So you may have to practice a little bit on a piece of scrap just so you can see what works the best for you. Okay, so let's see. I'm not too happy with my little spot right down here. Let's see if I can get it tipped up enough that it get a little bit of that out of there. I need to go find my glasses so I can see better. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a little slit. Just be careful, don't cut your underneath, and we need to get in this little piece out of here too. So I'm going to kind of start it, get it going, and then I'm going to tip my scissors when I get close to the edge there. Okay, so when you have to do this little inside pieces, sometimes it's a little tough to get in there. I really love that silver though. Turned out so cute. I just thought this pillow was really cute. Now these are all made from, a lot of these pillows were made from some of their old original sewing patterns that were like wall hangings. So this is also one of those. And you can also get the sewing pattern if you just want to make a wall hanging and do it, you know, just sewing instead of doing the embroidery. But I thought the pillows were cute. All right, so I got a little bit of a spot there. And let's see if I can get this one a little bit better. There we go. All right, how'd I do? That look pretty good? So there's my watering can. What do you think of that? I like the watering can. And then the next step is going to be number 5 on page, or it's like the 5th step after. So in other words, it's going to be the 10th step because remember we had 5 steps for the quilting. It's going to be the detail. So now we're just going to leave that gray thread in there. And we're going to go back in and it's going to do the detail on the little watering can. And then we're going to start the flowers. Okay, so here's our detail on our little watering can. That looks so cute. And now we're going to go on to the flowers. So these are going to be the chenille flowers up here. And the first one I'm going to do is the pink one. And I am using kind of a pink with swirls on it. So this is my fabric. And this is the ones that we put the shape flex on the back are going to be our base layers. And then there's going to be 3 more pieces that match it that are going to be the chenille layers. Okay, so these 3 do not have the shape flex on them. So I'm just going to lay those together. Okay, these are the 3. And then this is the one I put the shape flex on. And I'm going to use a pink here. So it's 1368 Horizon Pink that kind of matched my fabric. So we're going to get that loaded in the machine. And it's going to do the placement line for the base fabric. So that's the first step of this. So this is step number 9 in the instructions on page 11. So we're going to do our little placement line for the first little piece of applique. Then we're going to lay this over it. And whoops, second, I got a little tail here, so let me clip that little tail out of the way. We're going to lay this over that little circle, and then we're going to do the next step, which is going to be the tack down line for that. And then we're going to trim close to the stitches. So this is the first flower. So then we're going to trim close to the stitches. And then we're going to do, there's going to be a little decorative outline that's going to go around this. So this one we are going to be pretty close to the stitches. Second, let me move these out of the way. I'll get this out. So it's easier to go around the curves here. If I can turn the hoop. It's a lot easier when I don't have those great big hoops in the machine when I'm trying to trim in the, I like to try to trim in the machine so you can see. But I have a little trouble when I have those great big hoops because they don't turn in the machine very well. Okay, I'm going to get this. All right. And then it's going to do a decorative outline around that raw edge for us. Cover that up. Now I'm going to just leave the pink thread in there and do that. And then we're going to do the chenille part. So I'm going to get my chenille layers ready here. I'm going to do the little decorative stitch. They usually put a cute little motif stitch around that. So when you're doing your tack down line, make sure you use one that matches your thread that you want your motif, because it may show through. So you don't want like to put white thread and then have it show through your pink. So I usually use matching thread anyway, just because I've gotten nailed a couple times where I didn't have matching thread. So I just use matching thread now. Okay, so here's our 3 layers of chenille fabric, and I'm just going to lay them down. And the other thing you can do is it's going to use, let's see, what does it say here? We're going to lay them down. Using a visible thread color, stitch the flower basting line. Now, the basting line's big enough that I can actually really see it even with the same color, so I'm not going to change my color. If you want to, it does make it a little easier to see. So the next step is actually going to tack these 3 pieces down. And you can go ahead and like put yellow thread or white thread or something, but I can usually see it well enough. And the stitches are large, so you can get it out easily enough. Okay. And then the next step is actually going to be our little chenille lines here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave the same color in, and I'm going to sew the chenille lines. Also get to show you a couple of my fun little tools that I use for chenilling. Just going to just do those little lines. These are going to be really cute. And then there's the fringe are on the flowers are on this little stem over here. There's 3 little chenilled flowers in the center. And I always get my little tails, so I'm going to go ahead and clip those little tails. And we're also going to trim the fabric around those basting stitches, but we're not going to take the basting stitches out yet. So I'm just going to trim my little tails here. Sorry, my machine likes to make little tails. I don't know why. And then we're going to trim around that just like we did the other applique, if I can get it out of the machine. There we go. So we're going to trim all 3 of those together. Just don't trim through your basting stitches. And it's just going to go around just like the other. But I'm going through all 3 layers. Maybe. Having a little trouble tonight. Don't have my glasses on. I need to go fetch my glasses. They're here somewhere. There we go. Get over the stem. I'm going to cut through my thread. There we go. All right. So there's the first flower. So now we're going to repeat the same procedure with the next color of flower. So the next one, it says do not cut the basting stitches during this step. So we're not going to cut any of those basting stitches yet. So the next step is going to be done with the blue. So I need to find here's my blue fabric. And this one I'm going to use a different color, of course. So I'm going to use a light blue. So we switch over, and that is going to be my 017 light blue of all colors. Now this one I'm going to have to lay down because see how the little opening opens up like this? It won't stay shut anymore. So if you stand them up, they often get caught in this little line. This is my brother thread, and it gets caught in this. So every now and then I'll have one of these. So if you lay it down on your thread stand here, it's actually backwards, but it works fine. I just lay them down here with the big end to the right, and then I'm just going to thread it off of the regular thread spool for this one, just because of the way the spool is. And I'm as you can see, I'm just about out of this one. I have another spool, so, and it's okay because I can stand it up then. All right, so let's get the little placement line for our blue. Gotta find the other pieces of fabric here. Oops. Found my glasses. They were all, I almost knocked them off on the floor. All right, so we'll do there's our placement line. We're going to do the same thing we just did. Get rid of my little tail, and then we're going to put the piece, the base piece is the one that has the shape flex on the back. So put that on there, and then we're going to do the tack down line for that one and trim it. And then that's going to go around it twice. Okay, and then we're going to trim this one close to the stitches. I think the next flower is yellow. I thought this pillow was so pretty. I love yellow. It's such a happy color. My bedroom at home was always yellow, so it reminds me of being home. And our kitchen was always yellow. Mom liked yellow too. So my bedroom was always yellow, and none of the rest of the house is, but my bedroom was yellow and her kitchen was always yellow. Very happy colors. Okay, so we'll get this trimmed close to the stitches. There we go. Oops. Here go my scissors again. All right, and then the next step is going to be the little decorative outline around that applique. Again, you notice it's going to be a motif stitch, so you want to kind of use the matching thread for the tack down so that it doesn't show through your motif stitches. And I'm going to get my little pieces of fabric together here again, get them all stacked up, and this will be our chenille pieces. Like that. Get them all stacked up. Okay, and then we're going to lay the 3 pieces down. And again, if you want to use a visible color, you can. I'm just going to use the matching. It's the colors or the stitches are big enough I can really see them, so I'm just going to use matching. Whatever works better for you. Okay, I'm just going to go around and do that little basting stitch. And then again, it's going to do our chenilling lines. So give me a second. I think I got my tail again. I have to trim. My machine needs to be cleaned, but I hate to give it up, you know. All right, so then we're going to do, so I think we need to trim first. Let's see. Oh no, they do the trimming, do the trimming after the chenille lines. So we're going to do the chenille lines first and then trim. Oops. Lock down the little lever. There we go. We're going to do the chenilling lines first and then trim. It's going to do those 3 lines just like it did on the other one. And we'll cut all the basting lines toward when we do the chenilling. Right. And then, yes, it's going to do those and then we'll trim. I like the colors. This one was really fun. It had lots of really bright, springy colors. I think we're all looking forward to spring and having a little warmer weather. It sounds like we might get a little snow again. Yuck. So welcome spring, right? Okay, so now we're going to trim along that basting line. Just be careful. Don't cut through your basting stitches. The best you can. Cut around there, and I'm going through all 3 layers of the fabric. Oops, trying to trim around the camera here. Okay. Then I've got a little spot over here I need to trim. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's get that. And then we're going to go on to the last flower. And the last flower, it's like, and this is on the top of page 12. I need to turn my page here. These are going to be yellow. Yeah, so I'm going to put in my yellow thread, which is, get this out of our way here. Okay. And then this is my yellow. So my yellow is actually yellow. And it's number 205, yellow. Because that's what matched my fabric pretty well. So I got to find the end here. This is a new spool. I was about out of yellow. I think I ran out of yellow the other day. Seems like I run out of thread a lot. All right, so we'll put our yellow in, and then it's going to do the placement line for that little applique piece, and that's going to be the one, again, with the shape flex on the back. So here's my fabric with the shape flex. Now this one's a little bit directional, so I'm going to make sure that I put all of my fabric the same direction. So I'm just going to kind of line these up so I kind of get them all the same direction. Okay, and I'm going to put this over here and then do the tack down line. And then we'll trim again. So hopefully I can get them all kind of lined up here. I had to go buy yellow fabric because I don't usually have a lot of yellow. I like yellow, but I don't know why I hardly had any yellow, so I had to go buy some yellow fabrics. But I just thought this little fabric here with the little bugs on it was really cute. Kind of fit in with the theme because there's some butterflies and different things. So this one had like little ladybugs and bees. So I thought it was cute. So it was white and yellow, but that's the one colors I had to, the only colors I had to buy, just a couple of little, 2 or 3 little small pieces of fabric that were kind of yellow because I just didn't have any for this. So most everything I pulled out of my stash. All right, whoops. Lost a piece there. And then the next little step will be the little decorative outline around that flower. Okay. And then we'll be ready to put our chenille pieces on again. And then we're going to work on, we're going to move on to the fringe, and we get to try that new thread. So I'm really excited about this. So hopefully it works out okay. Otherwise, we'll just have an epic fail together. Sometimes things happen, you know. So I'm just going to try it. I figured, you know, can't hurt. Hopefully it works. I think it'd be really cool because then you don't have to do so much trimming. All right, so there's the decorative outline. And I'm going to try to get my pieces on the same direction. And we're going to lay our 3 pieces down. So this is all 3 of them all lined up together. And then it's going to do that little basting stitch. And again, if you want to, you know, change your color, you can. I'm just going to leave the same color, and it's not that hard to see it. And then it's going to do our little longer basting stitch. And then we're going to trim. Actually, no, we're going to do we're going to do the chenille pieces first. But I've got a long tail in there. We're going to get that out of the way first. There we go. And it's going to do the chenille lines, and then we'll trim. This one had a lot of steps. It didn't take very long, but it had a lot of steps in it because of all these little applique pieces. So it'll be fun. Well, so we'll see how this all turns out. I love the chenille, and I found a couple of really little cool tricks that I'll show you with the chenilling. And one of them you're going to laugh at, but it works really well because they used to do a lot of chenille, and they kind of stopped doing it, but I was glad they put some in this one because I like chenille. And these are little small pieces, so they go really quick. All right, so there's our 3 chenille lines, and now we're going to trim. Okay, second here, I got to get my tail out of the way here. I'm going to find out, I'll have to ask Ron when I send my machine down for service why it does that. See if he can get the tails to go away. Because I'm always trimming tails. My machine sews really well, but the bobbin sensor hasn't been working very well. I really cleaned it out though the other day, so I don't normally tell people to take covers off, but Tim taught me another cover I could take off to do a little more cleaning so I wouldn't have to bring it in right away. I hate to give my machine up. All right, so we got that trimmed, and now we're going to work on the fringe. So this is step number, it says do not cut the basting stitches. So we haven't done any basting stitches yet. So the next step is step number 36. It's like 21, which would be plus 10, so, or plus 5, so 26 in the machine. Change the bobbin to a water-soluble thread or a visible color. So if you don't have the water-soluble thread, what I often do is put black bobbin thread in my bobbin. So here's my black bobbin thread. And then you can see where you're trimming. So if you just trim it the old-fashioned way. But I'm going to try the water-soluble. So let me get that. So I'm going to, okay, so let me show you something else too. I use pre-wound bobbins. This is a white pre-wound bobbin. And my machine, most of you will need to do this. The bobbin cases need to, for the pre-wounds, normally the thread's a little thinner, so you have to use the bobbin case that has this blue dot in it. This is a tighter bobbin case for pre-wound bobbins, okay? So I have my pre-wound bobbin in that bobbin case, but I wound that water-soluble bobbin with I wound it myself. So this is the little thicker thread. So I'm going to switch back to my standard bobbin case, and I don't know if you can see it. It has kind of a green little paint on the screw here. So that's the one you normally use if you wind your own bobbins. So if you wind your own bobbin thread, you probably just have this bobbin case in, but I have to switch mine. So we're going to put this in. Okay, get it in there. And then I'm going to put my needle plate back on, and then we're going to put this water-soluble bobbin thread in there, and let's see how this works. I have been excited to try this, so we'll just try this. They didn't used to digitize their designs for the water soluble, so they've started doing that. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So that when it does, you're going to put the water soluble in when you're doing the fringe part, but you don't want everything to dissolve, so we need to put regular bobbin thread back in here after this first step of the fringing. So we're going to do I've got my water soluble in there. I'm going to switch to my blue, and the blue I'm using here is a darker blue, and I think it's called sky blue. Just a second here, me look at it. I think it's, yeah, it's 019 sky blue. That's one of my favorite blues. It's a very vibrant blue. So we're going to put that in the needle, and again, I've got that water soluble in the bobbin. And if you want to put like a black bobbin thread in there instead so you can see it, if you're just doing it the traditional way, that's fine. So we're going to do that, and let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you. So let's see what happens here. We're going to do the first part of the fringing, and then we're going to have to switch back to this is going to be the part that's going to make the loops. So that's why you use the water soluble here, because this is where we would have cut, like if you have the black in, this is where you would have cut those open. So let's just see what happens here. Seems to be doing okay. And it's going to do the 3 little rings, but then we have to go back to the regular thread because we need to have what they call a trapping stitch. And there's a little stitch that'll, very tiny little zigzag that's going to go on the inside there so that they don't come apart. You don't want all your fringe, all your thread would just come out. So we have to switch back and forth. So when they started doing fringe originally, they didn't make the machine stop in between. So you had to use regular thread in the bobbin. But this one, they have digitized it so that it will stop so we can change the thread. So there's the second one. I think there's only 3. Yeah. So it says change the bobbin thread back to the regular bobbin thread. We're going to do that for the next step. So there's the last one. So the only disadvantage for me is, of course, now I also have to change the bobbin cases. So I often wind a bobbin with regular bobbin thread, the regular brother bobbin thread, that I have when I do this kind of thing. And I don't have to do this very often in this pillow, so I thought I'll just switch the bobbin cases so you see me do it. So I'm putting in the tight one again with my regular bobbin thread. This is my pre-wound. Okay, and if you are not using pre-wounds, you do not have to do this. You can just use that regular bobbin case. But I just don't like to wind bobbins. I'm very lazy, so I don't like to wind bobbins. So I like to have pre-wounds. Okay, so now we got that back in there, and this is step number 37, and then on the machine it's 27. Okay, change the bobbin thread back to a neutral color. So the standard bobbin thread is what I have back in here now. Okay, so it's going to do that little trapping stitch. Put this back on. I'm going to leave the same color in the needle, and now it's going to do that little trapping. It's a very tiny little satin stitch that it's going to do around there. And it keeps everything, and this one's going to do, is it going to do a satin stitch? Or is it, yeah, it's going to do the little teeny narrow satin stitch. But what it does is it keeps everything from falling apart. And then the next step, we're going to go back to the water soluble, and it's going to do another layer of fringe on top. So there's like 2 layers to make them like more 3-dimensional. So that's cool. So we're going to have lots of and then what they say to do is they say to spritz the back of your block, and I've got a little spritz bottle, so we'll try it. We'll go on to the next block, and we'll go back and see what happens with our fringe, okay? Like I said, I've never tried this, so we're going to give it a whirl and see what happens. So there's the second trapping stitch, and then we're going to do a third one. And then we're going to go back. Second here, I got another tail sticking up. Let me get this before I forget it. There, we stopped the machine, okay? And then it's going to do the trapping stitch on the top one. But then we got to switch back to our water soluble again. So anyway, I will get the water soluble at the store, and I'll put it on the website. I have not gotten it yet. I was going to ask Tim tomorrow when he will be ordering from Baby Lock actually has it. So so when they have it, I'll order it. And I've used this Vanish before, so if it works okay, I can get it maybe a little faster. So we might put this up instead. So I was just going by what somebody had told me. All right, so now we're going to do more fringing. So I'm going to take this out again, and I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to change my bobbin cases. And again, if you wind your own bobbin thread on your own bobbins, you do not have to do this. I'm going to put my standard bobbin case back in here with my water soluble in it. But this just shows you what you should be doing if you use pre-wounds. So it gives you, I like to put these in the video so you know what I do. And I have to change my bobbin case more often now because I used to be able to put them in the same bobbin case, but my bobbin case croaked a while ago. So my old bobbin case that's been going for 4 years finally croaked. Had 17 million stitches on it. Or no, 14 million stitches on it. So, all right, so we're back to the bobbin, the water soluble bobbin thread, and it's going to do a second layer of fringe. And this is step number 38 on page 12, and then it's 23, well in our case 28 in the machine. And then we're going to go back and do another trapping stitch, but it's going to be the centers. So sometimes they'll do a trapping stitch that's actually like the center of the flower, or it's a fill, and it does the same thing. Instead of that little teeny zigzag it did before, it'll actually do a little fill, and that also traps the stitches in there. So here it goes with the second layer. So this is cool. I'm liking this. But, so we'll have to see how this works. It tells us in the book how to do it, so we'll do it together. And I'm anxious to try this and see how it goes, because there's actually quite a lot of fringe in this. In this particular pillow, there was fringe on at least 3 blocks. And they haven't been doing too much fringe lately. A second, I got my tail here. Let me get this before we forget it. There we go. before we go on. So there's that, and then I think the next step is actually, yeah, it's the centers of the flowers, and they did those in pink. So I'm going to use a pink for the centers. This will be fun. This is something new for me too. I love doing stuff together with my buddies, so you guys get to be my moral support to see how it works. Okay, so there's that. So now we have to change our bobbin thread again because we've got that water soluble in there. So I'm going to take this out, take my bobbin case out, and I'm going to put my regular bobbin thread back in. So this one we can set aside now for a while because we won't need it for a while. And we'll just put this back in. So this is my tight bobbin case, the one with the blue dot that I use with my freelance. So put that one back in. Whoop, there goes my top. I'll find it on the floor here in a second. This one back in. And where'd my lid go? Oh dear, I have a hard time with that. I am always, and they're gray, so it's very hard to find on my carpet. So give me a second. I'm going to have to turn the camera off for a moment while I search for it. Okay, I found it. My carpet is kind of a tannish gray, and so when that lid goes down on the carpet, boy, I have a hard time. So we got our regular bobbin thread back in there again, and now we're going to do the trapping stitch is going to be actually the center of the flowers. So that I'm going to do in pink, and that is my, believe it or not, the color is called pink, and it is 085. This is the old original pink. Brother had some really good colors. They had 60 colors originally, and they were the colors that were like for the Disney characters, and so they're really nice colors. So I often still use those original colors. All right, so then we're going to do the last trapping stitch with the regular bobbin thread in, okay? And that is going to hold all of those fringes in there together. And then we're going to start working on, there's just going to be a little placement line, but they say not to sew it out. The last step is actually one we're not going to sew out. So there's the little centers. Because step number 30 in the machine, and it's 40 on the page 12. It says not to stitch it out because it's just a placement line. And then we're going to remove the basting stitches. So I may turn the camera off for a minute while I get my basting stitches out. It always takes me a little bit to do that. But see how it's making the little fills, and then that's the trapping stitches for that second layer of fringe. All right. Okay. So the last step, we don't sew. It's just a placement line to keep everything in alignment where they wanted it. So we're not going to use that. We're not going to sew that one out. Okay, get my little tail out of there. Okay, now we're all done. So now what we're going to do with the stitching, so now what we're going to do is remove the basting stitches from the little round flowers, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off. I'm going to get my seam ripper out, and I'll take those stitches out. It takes me a few minutes to do that, so you don't need to sit here and watch me pick the stitches out. I think you know what to do. So just pick the little basting stitches out around the circles, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're going to be working with the chenille. So I have removed my basting stitches around the outside edge of my little flowers here, okay? And then there's some spots in between those stitches. It says, with fine tip scissors, gently lift the top 3 layers of the flower, one fabric, and cut a straight line down through the center of each chenille channel. So there's only 2 channels on each one, but I have a tendency, if I use scissors, that I have a tendency to cut through my applique piece. Remember the piece that we put the shape flex on the bottom? I'm always cutting through that. So I found this lovely tool. I love this. This is called the Clover / Cutter, and this is for making chenille. And I have these up on the website as well. I'll put a link to this slash cutter, and I love this little thing. So it has like a little rotary blade in it, and it has this little long pokey thing. This one's for straight lines, and if you need to do curves, there's a little short one here. Okay, so this is what the package looks like, and it's up on the website. So I'll put you the link. It's called the slash cutter on shieldssewingcenter.com. But I'll give you the link to it in the description below the video and in the comments. So normally most of you are probably seeing these on YouTube. So I always put all the links and all the information you need right below the video in the video description. And if you can't see the whole description, just click the little button that says see more, and it'll open it all up and you can find all that stuff. So this is the most wonderful little tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this little point, and it's not sharp, see? You're going to put it in that little channel and just want the top 3 layers. And I'm just going to slide it in there, and I'm going to go zoom right through there. And look, it has a little rotary cutter, like a little 28mm rotary cutter, and it is awesome. So I'm just going to zoom right through there again, like that. And it makes it so easy to cut these. Because when I use scissors, I almost always cut into my applique fabric at the bottom, and I never do with this, because it just slides right over those little decorative stitches and right underneath those 3 layers and right through the channel. Isn't that awesome? So I love this little tool. I use it all the time for the chenille now. So I'd highly recommend this if you have to do a lot of Kimberbell projects, because you do quite a bit of chenilling. Okay, so there's our little chenille tool. And then it says, and you notice I left this in the hoop. It's easier to do this in the hoop. Now, the one thing that they say, we're going to fray these, okay? And then the one thing that they say is to cut it down, to make it easier to fray it, is to spray it with water. Well, I have this thing about putting water on everything. We have to do it on the bobbin thread over here, so we're going to do that. But I want to show you my secret weapon when it comes to chenilling. Okay, so what I do is I like to kind of pull up the chenille so that the raw edges are kind of up. Okay, so I just kind of pull it up, you know, where those stitches are. Okay, kind of get them to kind of stand up. And then I'm going to show you my secret weapon. It's a very high-tech tool. It is a serrated plastic knife. This works great, and you want the good ones, don't buy the cheap ones. This is a nice one that we got in like a set of cutlery, and it's a nice knife. And oh my gosh, this does such a nice job of chenilling, and all my chenille just turns out beautiful with it. Now you have to be a little careful with these smaller pieces like this, that you don't get too over exuberant, because you could take all your fabric off. But we just want it nice and frayed on the edges. So what I'm going to do is take those serrated edges, and I'm just going to go over it like this. So when I stood them up, see how then it gave me a chance to get that. I have never tried wetting them, because I get a little bit nervous when I wet all this stuff, and then it just takes forever to dry. So I don't usually wet. So those look actually pretty good. So it's doing pretty good. So I'm just kind of getting my little piece, and then you're going to get a bunch of little junk on there, and you can just kind of get rid of it, pull it over to the side. Okay. And sometimes I give them a little trim. Okay, so there's one. Let's do this blue one, see how this one does. But this has been my favorite chenilling tool. And we found this by accident. We were at the store one day, and we needed to do some chenilling. And I usually used to use like a emery board, and it's just not quite sharp enough, and it would work, but you just had to work so hard at it. And I thought, well, what is sharp in the kitchen or something? So I went in there and I found these knives, and so now these are my chenilling tools. So they're awesome. So go get yourself a serrated knife, and then we're going to do the yellow one. And some fabric, you'll notice, also chenilles better than others. You know, this one's a little denser, so maybe it's not going to be as chenilled, but you know, work at it a little bit. Now I may go back and work on these a little more off the camera, but let's just kind of get it so you can kind of get an idea. So what do you think? Those look pretty good. And then what I do is I take my little tape runner when I'm all done. I'll take my little tape roller and get some of that gunk off of there. But aren't those nice? This works real well for the tool. So what do you think? a couple little spots down here. I'll work at it a little bit more, but what do you think? I think those turned out good. They have beautiful little flowers. We'll get all the little gunk off and hold it a little closer. See if it'll focus on it for you. Aren't those cute? Okay, and then so I'll finish up those a little bit to make them a little more beautiful. Maybe give them a little bit of a trim here and there if something looks funny. Okay, so there's the chenille. So we have done some chenille. I don't know if there's any more chenille in this pillow or not. I haven't looked that far forward. Since we're kind of doing this together, I haven't looked that forward. So yeah, so I'll do a little bit more work on those yet. Then it talks about the bobbin thread. So let's see how this works. So turn the hoop to the back. Remove the fringe bobbin thread from flower 4 as follows. So these flowers, okay? So if you use like the black bobbin thread, it says to use snips or a seam ripper to clip the visible thread from the machine, steps 21 and 23. So there's 2 layers, remember. Be careful not to clip any neutral colored bobbin thread. And then you let the fringe, you pull the fringe out like from the front, okay? But if the water-soluble bobbin thread was used, spray the fringe stitches with water to dissolve the bobbin thread. Okay, well, I have my little bottle. They suggested a spray bottle, so I'm going to turn this over, and we're going to try this, and then we'll go on to the next block, and then we'll come back and see what happens. So I'm going to turn this over, and what we're looking for is this white thread back here. You can see those bigger white pieces. That's what's going to dissolve, we hope. So I'm going to take, I've got my little Kimberbell. They sent us these little ones in the Bella box, this cute little spritz bottle. So I'm just going to spray that. Okay. So I just put like a few little spritzes on it, and then we're just going to set it aside and see what happens and see if it dissolves. All right. So we can move on to the next one, then we'll come back and see what happened. So this is the experiment. All right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to set that one aside. And what does it say? It says, turn the hoop to the front, carefully lift the satin stitches up and away from the tack down stitches. Note, work from the center outward. And if the water-soluble thread was used, lay the block flat and allow it to dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it sit for a second to see if it works. And we may have to come back to it while we I'm not sure, maybe it is dissolving. It looks like it's dissolving. Can you see that the white's kind of gone? So maybe it's working. We may just let it sit for a little bit. Let's see if it comes out. Let me try my seam ripper and see if any of it comes out yet. It might need to sit for a minute though. Where did I put my seam ripper? Here it is. Let's see what happened. It says to work from the center out. So I don't think it's quite ready. So we're going to let it, I might put a little more water on it, and we'll let it sit and then come back and see what happens, okay? Because I can see that the white is going away. So let me get my water. Oh, here's my water bottle. We'll give it another couple spritzes in the back here. But that's what somebody told me when I used this a few times, and I didn't use enough water. So they told me to make sure you spritz it instead of just using like painting it with they always said Q-tip at that time, and I had a little problem with it. So I thought, well, we'll just give this a try, and I'm going to let it set. So let's let it set, and let's go on to the next one. So I'm going to turn the video off for just a minute, and we'll come back and we'll look at this at the end of the video. And we'll do the trimming together on both of them, okay? So the next block is actually going to be 3 blocks. So I'm probably only going to do 1 on the video because you're just going to do the same block 3 times. And this is the pieced rose. So this one is going to be 3 blocks, and they're just going to be in different colorways. So there's going to be a blue flower, a yellow flower, and a pink red flower, okay? So we're going to use all 3. The blocks below are shown as they will appear in the hoop. Rows 2 and 3 will be rotated in a different, rows 2 and 3 will be rotated in the finished project. Oh, I see. So they're the same block, but then you rotate them when you turn them, when you get together to put them together. So, okay, I understand now. All right. So on this one, we're also going to use a Quilting Design. And they do couple of them with spring 2, and they do one with the geometric. So we're going to do we're going to change the quilting design also, it looks like, on this one. So I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment while I get everything organized for this block, and then we'll come back and look at our fringe here in a little bit too. Okay, so I've been playing with this fringe a little bit, and it comes out pretty well. So what I did is I spritzed it, and it was pretty wet, and it is kind of wet, so we'll have to let them dry. And so what I found that works the best for me is I use my seam ripper, like the back side of my seam ripper here. And you can kind of work at it and then take your thumb and pull back. But what really worked is when I figured out that if I turned it over, and once it was kind of, the water-soluble thread was kind of dissolved, take your thumb or your thumbnail and just go over and get all of that kind of, it's a little bit of a goo. And that's the best technical term I have. And I just kind of took my thumb over it, and then I turned it back over again and started using my seam ripper again, and then everything just really started to free. And I like this method because then you don't get those little, you know, when you trim your bobbin threads, no matter how careful you are, you still get a few of those, you know, you just trim through, and then they're not, the fringe is not loopy, you know, and you get that. So then see on the outside, see, I can do the same thing with my thumbnail. Pull it back. Okay, I'm going to go turn it over again and see if there's any more goo back here. But that helped because there was some goo that was sort of like gluey a little bit. And then if you take that off of the thread, then it comes right out, because you can feel there was like a little residue coming off. And then this comes off real well, and then I can take my thumbnail and pull it. So these are looking nice, and they're nice and loopy, you know, they're not going to have those little open spots on them like you do when you have to trim them. So I do like this. So this is working okay. I'm anxious to try it a couple more times with the other pieces to see, but I still use my seam ripper, and that seems to work the best. But those look pretty good. They're looking nice and fluffy. And then we're just going to have to let these dry, you know, everything's, and there's a couple of little hairs that are going to have to be trimmed, but there normally is. But what do you think? I think that turned out pretty good. So I spritzed it so that it was pretty wet from the back. That's what they said. And then after it dissolved, you were getting kind of a little goo residue on these little pieces. And so I took after it was kind of soft and wet, I just took my thumbnail and scraped that goo off. And then it's really seemed to come out nicely. So see, you can see these are pretty good. There's a little spot right here yet that I need to get out on the top of the second one. But that looks pretty good. I'm actually pretty pleased with these. Yeah, see that little spot right there? I think I just need to, yeah, there it comes. It's coming out. And then just let them dry, and then we'll finish them up. We'll finish them up before we put it together, but that looks really good. And then I'm pleased with that, because I like the loopy fringe. And you know, sometimes I would get my fringe, but I did have to let it set for a little bit. I just turned the camera off for a little bit and played with it so that I could get them to come out. But that looks pretty good. There's one little spot here yet, but just take your seam ripper and on the back of it, you know, don't use the sharp side, just use the back, and then they're just coming out, and everything's nice and loopy. And so yeah, that looks really good. So that's a new method. I have never tried that before. I like that. And there's still a couple little spots over here, so I'll just keep working at it a little bit. But now you get the idea. And then these are a little wet now too, so I'll let them dry, and then we'll see how they look. I might have to fringe them a little bit, but I'll just let everything dry. But isn't that darling? And then there's a couple little hairs I'm going to trim, but I'm pretty happy with that actually. But yeah, so I spritzed it till it was pretty wet, and then let it sit for a little bit, and then I turned it over, and then there was this kind of goo film over here, and I just kind of scraped it off with my thumb, and then it let those pieces come loose real easy. So then it was better. But I did have to scrape a little bit. These are pretty small. You know, sometimes when you do fringe, it's bigger areas, but this was pretty small areas, so sometimes they're a little tight in there. But yeah, I like those. I like those nice loopy flowers. So that's our fringe. We got our fringe done, and we're going to go on to the next block and do our little paper piecing. It's like the paper piecing in the hoop one. You know, we're going to do our little flip and folds, and those are really fun. So if you give me a second, I'm just about set up, and we'll go on to the second block. But I'm going to take this out of the hoop now. It's easier to work on these things like the fringe and the chenille in the hoop because it just gives you something to hang on to, and it keeps it kind of steady. And then I'm just going to set these aside. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. So, all right. So I'll be back in a moment, and we'll start our new block. I was playing with the fringe, and I think I like the method. So, all right. Okay, so on to the second, third, and fourth block. So we're going to do the same block 3 times in 3 different colors. So what I did is it told me here all these 2x3 pieces, and it told me what piece they were over here on page 14 for my pieced rows. So what I did is I laid them in the order that I'm going to pull them off. Okay, so I just went through and I looked at, you know, piece 1 and 8 are going to be the same. So here's 1 and 8. You know, I got them here. 2, 7, and 9. So I just put them in the order that it says to do here. And then the background pieces are going to be like your white or whatever your background is. And it tells you what, like 10, 11, and 12 are going to be the 2x3 pieces, and 13 and 16, the 2.5x5. So I just put them in a stack in the order I want to use them. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do for each color. Okay, so then, and then the color waves are going to be different. So just whatever it tells you here, if you just lay your pieces out in the order, then you'll have them in the right order that you want them. Okay, and normally I think one of mine has like a little gray stripe for a background, and the other one's white. This one's white. Okay, and then the first and the third rows, we're going to put one of the spring 2 design on, and then the rows 2 we're going to put the geometric design. So it has 2 different quilting designs on the back. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our quilting design up. These are going to end up being 4x4. Yeah, 4x4. So I put it in my 5x7 hoop with my no-show mesh stabilizer in, of course. So I have that ready to go. And then let's go ahead and bring up our quilting design. So let's do the first one, which is the blue rose. And I'm going to do that one in, so it's 4x4 spring 2. So let's go grab our spring 2 quilting design. Again, oops, second here. I can't get my fingers to work tonight. Let's go down here to spring 2. Oops. Let's see. Stipple, whoops. Must be getting closer. Spring 2. And then we're going to do the 4x4 design. Block by block. And this is, again, the one with the little watering can. So we need it to be 4x4. So we have to find our 4x4 design, which is right here. We're going to use that one. Okay. It's going to end up measuring in the frame 4.5 by 4.5, but the 5x7 hoop is plenty big enough for this one. Okay. And then we're going to set that, and then we're going to go grab our pieced rows. So we're going to hit add. And when we put this together, then we're going to turn a couple of the roses so they're in a different orientation. All right, so then we're going to go get the rows. And these are going to come in, it says align the block embroidery file with the quilting design so that both are centered. So again, we're going to do the centered ones. Let's see, life is better. We're going to get our rows. Okay. And hit set. Okay, and embroidery. Now this one's going to be a little different, and I'm only going to do this one once on the camera because you do the same thing 3 times. What I might do on camera though is to kind of sort my other 2 colors for you so that if you need a little help getting them sorted. So I might do that on the camera so you can see that. But we're only gonna sew this once because you're going to sew the same thing 3 times, but just in different colors. Okay, and we're going to do one of them, the second one, we're going to do in that other geometric quilting design instead of the spring. Okay, So I have my little pile. So I went through and got all my little fabrics in a pile. I've got them here. But we're going to start out with our quilting. Now this is going to be just a little different because we need to get the batting in there, and we need to piece it before we quilt it, of course, because there's not going to be any fabric on the top. So we need to get our batting in there. So the first step is going to be the batting placement line. So we're going to do our batting placement line. I've got to get my chunk of batting here. So we're going to sew out our batting placement line. I'm going to put my little pile of fabrics over here. And then we're going to lay our batting down, of course, and do the tack down line. Okay. And then we're going to tack it down. I love flip and fold. This is like my favorite thing. And you'll have to excuse me because I really don't pay attention to what I'm doing. When I get my fabrics all in a row here, I don't really pay attention to the instructions very well. I kind of do it by watching what the machine's doing. So you'll have to forgive me that if I don't follow the directions exact. I have a helper again. My cat decided she has to come see me. I think it must be time for TREATSs. I can't say it, otherwise I will have to get up and get her one. So, all right, so there's our tack down line. I don't get my fabric messed up there, cat. All right, so then we're going to trim our batting. Okay, so we get our batting in here, but we don't need the tack down line or the placement line for the top fabric because there is no background fabric yet because we're going to piece. Okay, and we also don't need that tack down line, and we don't need to quilt yet because there's no fabric. So we're going to skip steps 3, 4, and 5 right now and just go on to the first step of the actual piecing. So give me a second here and we'll skip those steps. So we're going to skip steps 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to hit my little positive negative spool and I'm going to go down. Here's 3. See, we're going to skip that. We're going to skip 4. And we're going to skip 5, and that's the quilting. So we want to be on step number 6, which is going to be the picture, or our little drawing. They always give you the little road map for your block. So we're going to do that next, and I'm just doing this all with white thread. I'm going to piece the whole thing with white thread. I just have white thread in my needle and my regular bobbin thread in my bobbin. And sorry, Gigi, you're going to have to move, kid. Oh, sorry. She just about got nailed by the machine. So it's going to do our little road map for us. Then we know where everything's going to go. And I have my colors in the order I want them. And of course, we'll start with step number 1. It's going to do our whole little road map first. You know what? You're not going to be able to stay in here. There you go. So it's kind of doing like, it gives us like, that's where the outside of the edges of the fabric's going to be and everything. So it kind of gives us all of our little lines, but we'll go back and get the quilting in a little bit. And then, see, I'm just kind of looking here. I think I got this the way I want it. And we'll go back and trim the first block too at the end when we can trim them all at the same time. This is cool. This is going to be a fun one to do. It's not hard. It just seems like it has a lot of pieces for being so small, but it's not hard. We've done these before, so I'm sure you'll understand as soon as you get going. The hardest thing for me was just making sure I had the fabrics in the right order, so I just put them in a pile so that they're in the order I want them. Okay, so here is our road map. So we always put our fabric right side up to start. And if you look on the piece of paper here, whoops, if you look on the piece of paper here, step number 1 is going to be this piece here. So here's the triangle and it's this piece right here. Okay, so I need my first piece right side up over this. So let me find my little piece here. Whoops, I don't want to get them out of order. So I'm going to get that piece and I'm going to put it over this section right here and just lay it right over the section. Okay. And then I'm going to stitch the next step, and what that is going to be is like a tack down and a trimming line for that piece that we just laid down. And then we're going to trim against this line. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back so you can see, and we're going to trim along this line here. Like this. And the second step, the second fabric, I've got it on my little pile here. The second fabric we're going to lay against that edge that we just, the raw edges together, right sides together, right along, and I'm going to kind of center them on there. And that was step number 6 and 7 is going to be the stitching on the bottom of page 14. So we're going to go ahead and stitch out this one. It's going to stitch the two of them together. And it's the same procedure for all of these flip and folds. I just love them. So you put, the first piece is always right side up. And then after that, everything is right sides together. Okay. So now I'm going to flip this up because we want to show the right side. Where that seam is, I'm going to finger press it really well. You can use a little iron or like one of those little wood pressers, but I just usually use my fingernail. Okay. And then the next step is going to be kind of along right here. So we're going to stitch that out because we need to know where to put our next piece of fabric and to trim the fabric. So just make sure nothing moves. And then we're going to trim along that line that it just made. Okay, so we're going to trim along that line right here. And we're trimming on the outside. And this is step number 9 and 10 on page 15. So we're going to trim along here. I'm trying to watch the book, but I have a tendency just to pay attention to what the machine does. so hopefully I won't miss anything. Then we're going to put the next piece of fabric, which is the next one in my pile. So we're going to put that one along that line. We'll kind of center them, and then we're going to stitch, put the raw edges together, right sides together, kind of, evenly, like that. Okay, and then we're going to stitch that one down. And then we'll flip that one over. So this actually goes pretty quick. I know it looks very intimidating, but I remember when I first started doing these, I learned to paper piece in the hoop a little differently, and so it took me a little while to get the rhythm down, but once you kind of get the rhythm down, it's just the same over and over and over again. All right, so we're going to flip that up, and I've got my pile over here, so I know where I'm going. So there's that one. And now we need another placement line and, trimming line. So the next thing is going to be the placement trimming line right here. And it's going to go, this one's going to go kind of across the top, right here. And then we're going to trim along that line. So it just tells you where to go. And you just have to kind of pay attention, take your time. Then we're going to trim along here. Get all these trimmed. Oops, I missed a piece here. This one, I'll just leave that one there for now. It might be okay. All right. And then we're going to lay the next piece, which is this lighter blue. We're going to lay it along this line. So here, my line's like between here and here. So we want to make sure that it's lined up evenly on that line. And then it's going to trim, it's going to tack that down. And this is like steps number 16 and 17 on page 15. And then we're going to flip this one up. There were a lot of little pieces in a very small area on this one. I was surprised at how many pieces there were for this. Okay, so we're going to flip this one up. And we're going to finger press real well. Okay, and then the next step it's going to do, it's going to kind of sew down this side. Okay, so put that back in, and then we're going to stitch down this other side. I just love doing these. This is my favorite ones now. It took me a while to get used to doing them, just because they were different than the way I learned. And so Once I got the rhythm though, you just watch what the machine's doing and just go with it. And you can go through them real quick. So I'm going to flip this over. Okay. We're going to trim along this line, this outside line. I have a little trouble trimming on the batting. Okay, trim along that line. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's all going to be covered up. And then my next step is going to be, my fabric's going to go along here. So I've got my next piece on my pile, and I'm just going to line it up on those lines. And this is going to be steps number 21 and 22 on the bottom of page 15. And then we're going to sew. Yeah, I kind of like that fringe. What did you think about that water soluble? You'll have to let me know what you think about it if you tried it. It's kind of neat. So I'll get some ordered for the store. So there's some in the website and some in the store. Okay, so we're going to flip this back. And then this is step number 23 on the bottom, page 15. I'm going to flip my page. So I'm trying to keep it so you can see. Okay, and then I think it's going to kind of go kind of this way. So that's the next step. Make sure it's good and pressed. And it's going to sew again. It's going to kind of go diagonally on the left here. Okay. And then we're going to trim along that line. So it's going to kind of go along this way. I have a little trouble sometimes with the batting. It kind of gets on the tip of my scissors, but just take your time. And like I said, if it's not perfect, no one's ever going to see it. It's going to be all covered up. So sometimes I leave a little bit of mess underneath and no one sees it. Okay. So there's that one. And then the next one is going to be this lighter blue. So we're going to go back along here. I'm going to get it all lined up on that line. Try to get about centered. Usually takes care of it. And then we're going to sew along that same line there. And that was number 26 and 27 on the top of page 16, and then 28 is going to be the flipping it over. So we're getting about done with the blues. So I'm going to flip this over. Finger press it, and then I think the next piece is going to kind of go this way. So that was step number 28. So 29 is going to be the stitching line that kind of goes this direction. Okay, so make sure they all stay in place. When there's batting there, it really keeps everything kind of in place, so you don't have to worry about it moving around on you so much. Okay, and then we're going to trim along that line next. These are fun. I just love to do these. These are very relaxing for me now. I've done lots of them. And so it's a little, the only thing that this one's a little different in that the pieces are very close in size and in color. So I have to kind of figure out where my stack needs to go before I start. And I just got them in order, and then I can just pull. So it works pretty good. Okay, so we got that. Okay, and then the next one on my stack is this one. And this is going to be like step number 31, 32, and 33 on page 16. So we'll get this one. And it's going to, so we want to make sure we kind of get the lines lined up here. Okay, and the raw edges like that. And then it's going to stitch along that line. Trying to watch the numbers. There's always a lot of instructions for these, so they're very intimidating looking because there's so many pieces, you know. Like this one had 37 steps, but it, you know, it doesn't take long. All right, and then we're going to pull this back, flip it down, and give it a nice press. And then I think the next step is going to be 34, and it's going to kind of go this direction. So it's going to kind of stitch up this way. and then we'll trim again. So it kind of has that rhythm, you know, we sew, we trim, and then we place fabric, and then we flip it, and then we start again. So it's kind of the same 3 steps over and over. All right, so we're going to trim along here. So this one's not, it looks so hard, but it really isn't bad. And we have not, we'll go back and get the quilting here in a little bit, because we still have to quilt. All right, so now we're on step number, let's see, this is going to be the light greenish blue. Okay, so it's going to go along this little section right here. Okay, so we're going to make sure those are kind of lined up. And I'm going to see if I can trim just a little better. I didn't do very well with the trimming, and that's a very light color, so we're just going to make sure we don't have anything real dark there. There we go. I'll pull it. Make sure I get it lined up with the line there. Okay, and then it's going to stitch this one down. And then I think that this is steps number 36, 37, and 38 on page 16. So we're going to flip this one, and then I think it's going to sew across the top. This one just had lots of little pieces. Wow. Okay, get this one nice and done. And then this one's going to kind of go this way across the top here. And this is step number 39. Got one more blue, and then I think we're going to start putting the background on. So my background's all white. So we're going to trim this way. Oops, here. I always have trouble with that batting. I used to have another pair of scissors I like to trim against the batting, but I can't get them anymore, and they're so dull. They had a really neat like curved end, so they didn't catch the batting. So they at least catch the batting a little bit. All right, so then we're going to get our last blue piece, and then we're going to put it along this line. Get it lined up. Okay, and we're going to stitch that one. And this is going to be steps number 41, 42, and 43 on page 16. Oops, looks like I unthreaded my machine, so we're going to have to back up a little bit. Rethread my machine. The cat likes my thread. She likes to see me thread the machines. Then the thread wiggles, you know. So she's up here watching my thread wiggle. So I'm going to hit the little negative, positive needle, and I'm going to go back up to the beginning of that step. So, oops, something just went flying on the floor, including the cat. It's always sort of like, you know, a 3-ring circus here, and I only have 1 cat left. I used to have 4, and my gosh, it was just terrible. There was just something going on constantly. But with 1 cat, she's not quite as bad. She's not real young. So, all right, so we're going to flip this one up. Get that one nicely pressed down, and then I have to turn my page. Just a second, I'm going to turn the page 17. And then it's going to do kind of a little line up here. So now we're going to be working with the whites over here. Okay, I've got my little, so now we're working with the background. And I have them in order. The first 3 pieces were the smaller pieces, and then you needed some bigger ones. So I have my bigger ones in the back. Okay, so it told you what size to put those order in. So here's my, this is step number 44, 45. This is 44 in the instructions on 17. I'm going to trim. And then 45, we're going to put our first piece of white on. That's our background. So here's that one. Get my white, my first white. It's a smaller piece of white, and we're going to make sure we get it kind of centered on that line. Looks pretty good. Right side down. And then we're going to stitch that one. And this is step number 46 and 47. And then 48 will be flipping it over on the top of page 17. And it looks like we're going to start working on the other side here. So we'll flip this one up. So see, we're getting to the edge now. Pick this up. Get it nicely pressed. And then we're going to start working on this side. So this side is step number 49 and 50 and 51. So 49 is the sewing. And we're going to trim. So is everybody feeling the rhythm? It's just the same. There's just a lot of pieces in this very small block. I looked at it and I was like, wow, look at all those pieces. Because I thought I never was going to get done cutting. You know, you cut and cut and cut all these little pieces. I'm like, wow. Okay, so I'm going to trim this little chunk off there too. Oops. See if I can get some of that blue off of there so I won't show my white fabric. There we go. All right. So we got that side. Now we're going to put our fabric down. So I've got my next piece of fabric. Make sure I get it right side down here. We're going to put it on our line over here. Get that in there. Okay. And we're going to stitch this one. This is step number 52 on page 17. And we're going to flip it over, which is step number 53. Let me flip this over. Getting our background on there. It's going to start looking like a flower all of a sudden. They always look so funny when you're, halfway done with them. And then all of a sudden they look like a flower. Okay. And then we're going to do this there's a little side over here. So we're going to do that one. Make sure everything's laying nice and flat. Stitch our line. This is step number 54, 55, and 56 for this piece. This is 54. Okay, and we're going to trim this one. Trim along here. And we're going to put some more white on here. Whoops, all my pieces are white now. All the background pieces. So then there's another background piece, and then this is going to be right here. So we need to make sure we get this covered. Right sides together here. Get this nicely covered. Right there. There we go. Okay. It's going to stitch that one. And this is steps number 56, 57, and 58 on page 17. Flip this one over. Okay, that one. And then I think it's going to work this direction. So now I've got some bigger pieces over here because we're going to be covering these bigger corners, I think. So, all right, get this one. So now it's going to kind of go this direction. And this piece is one of the long ones. So this was like one of the longest ones. That's going to kind of cover this corner up here. And we're going to trim along this whole line here. Okay. I knew this video would be a little longer, and I apologize because there was so many blocks. And so probably what I'll do is I will make my other two blocks off camera and come back, and then we'll do the trimming on all four of these blocks together. And finish up the fringe. Okay, and then we got our big long one here, so I can make sure I get it right side up here. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to put it along this whole line. So just kind of center it on that line. It has to be the big, this is one of the biggest ones. Okay. And then we're going to stitch this one. And this is step number 61, 62, and 63. Whoops, it looks like I unthreaded again. I have a tendency to unthread. I push the thread out of the needle when I'm putting the hoop in and out. So I apologize that I may have to rethread a few times here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of that stitch. There we go. So I just backed up. I just hit the back up, so we'll go to the back of the beginning of that straight stitch. So I'm going to turn my page again. We're getting close. We're on the last page, everybody. Okay. Then I'm going to flip this one over like that. Get it all pressed down, and then I think we're going to go do this other corner over on the other side here. All right, so then we're going to do our placement line and our trimming line. So this is step number 64, 65, and 66 that we're doing here. We'll trim again. I like this backing. This one has the little swirls on it. So that's what happens is I always catch my thread when I'm in and outing the hoop so much. Pull that tail back. There we go. All right, we're going to trim along here. Get these trimmed. Having a little trouble with the batting here. There's a little chunk. Sometimes you get a little bit of places that you've sewn over a couple times, and so you have to kind of try to get them trimmed. So they're a little messy. This one was a little messy. So there we go. Down there. Get all that out of there. Oops, sorry, I keep hitting the camera. It's between me and the trimming here, so I'm going to see if I can get that chunk of gunk out of there. There we go. That looks better. Okay, now this one is also going to have a white corner. And let's get some of that blue out of there so it won't show through my white fabric. Might have to go, let me go up and grab my, sometimes I need my lint roller. It's just behind me here. So I'm going to just take that and get some of that blue out of that so I don't have a bunch of blue lint under my white fabric there. Okay, look at this one. Make sure it's right side up. Put the right sides together along that line. So these last ones were pretty good sized fabrics. And then it's going to stitch along there. And then, so this is step number, let's see, 66, 67, and 68 in the book. On page number 18, we're on page number 18. All right, so we're going to flip this over and get the tail out of the way here. Go up in here. Get it nicely pressed. That's starting to look like something. They always look so weird when you start working on them. All right, and then we're going to do, I was going to go along this corner now. So we'll do our trimming line. I think I unthreaded the machine again. See, I told you. Got to watch me. Rethread the machine. And back up. There we go. And we'll get it. So this is step number 71, 72, no, 69, 70, 71, I believe. So we're going to go along this corner here. This was going to be another one of the kind of medium-sized backing pieces. There's a couple that were longer and then a couple that were a little shorter. This is another one of those little spots I kind of have to dig in there and get some of that blue out of there. All right. Get that out of the way. And then I'm going to put this one on. We're almost done. Got one more piece left. All right. I'm going to do this. Make sure we kind of line up the corners there. Like that. And we're going to stitch along here. And this is 71, 2, and 3. It's amazing how many pieces they do all the little instructions, and there's so many instructions in there. These are always very intimidating looking when you look at them. So, all right. And again, and also just so you remembered, I put in the design and the quilting design was like centered on each other. So there was no, like, we didn't have to move it or anything. All right, so we're going to get this flipped over, and then it's going to do this long one over on this other side. Do this one, and then we'll put the last piece on, and then we get to quilt it. So cool. And then we're going to do 2 more of these. So I'll probably do my other 2 off camera and bring them on, and then we will go ahead and do all the trimming, and then we'll look at our fringe one more time, because I think the fringe looks pretty good. I wanted to show you after it had dried a little bit, and you will have to set those aside and let them dry, because I had to get it pretty wet to get that really to dissolve. So I did get it pretty wet, and it'll take a little while for it to dry. But we won't need them for a little while. They can just set aside and dry. And you can press them a little bit while we work on other blocks. All right. This one's being contrary. Sometimes you get those little spots where they're stitched and they don't like to trim very well. There we go. Okay, here's that one. And then, make sure if I get all the blue out of there. And then the last piece of white, yay! We're going to put this across this way. Make sure I get it the right way. I'm going to line up my stitching. So it has to kind of come this way, because it's going to kind of cover this whole corner here. Like that. All right. Put that one down. And this was 76, 77, and 78. But we have one more step to do, because we got to go back and we got to pick up the quilting. So we're going to flip this over, and it's going to do a little outline around the outside edge and hold all of our fabrics down. So you want to make sure that everything is well pressed along the edges, because it's going to actually go do the little runaround around here and hold all this down for us. And then we're going to back up and do the quilting. All right. So let's get that. So we're going to do, and I am going to kind of watch this a little bit. If you're worried about it, put some tape on these big flappers up here, but I think it'll be okay. Just going to kind of watch it. They usually do a pretty good job of keeping everything pretty sewed down where it's going to stitch. So I think we're going to be okay. Looks like it. All right. So we're going to do that. And now we got to back up, because we also need to, we got to back up, and we got to get up down to number 5 where the quilting is. So I'm just going to, see, it went back to the beginning because we were done. And so I'm just going to use my negative positive needle, and I'm going to go down to step number 5, because we have to quilt it now since we got all the fabric on there. So here's our quilting, and then that's what it's going to do next. All right. So got my white thread in there, so we didn't have to change thread or anything. So now it's going to quilt it. And then I'm going to, I'll do my yellow. I may go through, we'll get them kind of organized together, so that if you need a little help organizing your fabrics. And then I'll do my other 2, and then I'll come back on, and we will do the trimming together. And I'll show you my fringe after it's a little bit dried. And then we'll be done with the first 4 blocks. Can you believe it? They go pretty quick once you get going. I knew it was going to be a couple hours for a video, though, because there was a lot of, and we had to talk about cutting and everything. So I'm sorry that the video is a little long, but you can start and stop it as you're going. This is going to look good. I like this. This is and then the second, also just to remind you, the second rose, which is the yellow one. I think I'm going to do the third rose first because it's the same quilting design, but but I don't have to change anything on my machine. But the second one, they have you do the other um, quilting design, which is the geometric 8, and they said they use the vertical design. So there's one that goes up and down and one that goes sideways. So I'll do the second one. I'll do the third one first, just because then I don't have to change the design. Because you do first and third with this design, and the second with the geometric. There we go. So see, now it's all quilted. And then we'll trim this in a little bit. I'll come back and do all the trimming and all the blocks. But there's our first rose. Isn't that pretty? And then I'll also show you how to do, I might show you how to do the little leaves at the end. I was going to show you now, but I think I'll show you the leaves with one of the last videos with the blocks, because those blocks don't take as long. So we'll do the leaves then, because there's some little leaves that you put on the edge of these. So, all right, so there's our first rose. So when we go to do our fabric, it is just a little confusing. So it gives you the sizes here. And let me find my other yellow. So my yellows, they kind of start with some kind of whites and, you know, light colors in the center there. And so I have two yellows that are kind of solid. So these are going to be the kind of solid ones. And then I'm going to do these other two. Here's my other two that are less solid. So this is my flowered one, and this is my little white one here. So this is going to be number 1 and number 8. Okay. And then 2 is going to be one of the yellows. So there was 3 of those. So I think it's this one. Okay. So I'm going to have 1. This is 1. And then 2. And then 3 is going to be the darker, this yellow, because there's only 2 of those. So the third, yeah, 3 and 5. So it's going to be this one, the darker one. And then 4 is going to be my flowers. Okay. And then 5 is going to be the same as 3. So I'm going back to, I think the third one was this one. So this one. And then 6 is going to be my flowers again. And 7 is going to be the darker one that there was 3 of. Okay. And then 8 is going to be the first one, the one with the little bugs on it. And then 9 is going to be that one that I had 3 of. Okay, so like that. So there's my yellows. And then you got to use your background pieces. So that's through number 9. And then 10 is going to be a short one. 11 is going to be a shorter one, because these are cut like 2 by 3. Okay, so those 3 are going to be the short ones. And then you're going to do the 5-inch one. So 13 is the longer one. 14 and 15 are those medium-sized ones, and then 16 is the long one. So that's how I did it. I kind of just looked at the colors here to and I don't have the exact color. So if you have the exact colors from the kit, then yours will be really easy. But mine, I had to kind of figure out how I wanted them. And you can tell by how many are cut, and it tells you what size each of these pieces are going to be, and then what size your backgrounds are. Okay, and then I just have them all stacked up in my little stack for my second flower, which is going to be my rose. That's rose 2, and rose 3 is going to be, that's the one we're going to do the geometric. So why don't we just bring that up so you see that on the camera, because we're going to do that with the other design. So that one says my yellow. Yeah, yellow is rose 2. So we can just go back. Let's just go back and bring it in so you know what to do. So we're going to do the embroidery. And this one is geometric 8 is the one they used on this one. So my Kimberbell quilting, we're going to go to geometric 8 for this is for the rose 2. Let's see. FG, see if I can, geometric 7, 8. And then it says to use the 4x4 vertical. So we're going to go find the 4x4. Okay, 4x4. Okay, so this is the vertical one. The vertical is up and down, so we're going to go up and down. So we're going to use this one. Yep, that's the one we want. So we're going to use that one and set it. And then we're going to go add, and we're going to go back and get our rows. And then you're going to go back to the other design for the last one. Let's go get Life is Better. And let's see, where is it? Here it is. And then set that one. And then you're going to do the same thing with those two. Again, do your batting and your tack down line, skip through the fabric lines and in the quilting, and then just go right into the stitching, and then back up and get number 5 for your quilting. Okay, so the last thing you're going to do is just back it up and do number 5 and do the quilting. All right. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera off for a little bit, and I'm going to do my other roses, and then I'll come back on and we will do the trimming together, and then I'll show you my other block also with the fringe, because it's starting to dry now. So I will be back. Okay, so we're ready to do the trimming. I've got here's my blue block. That was with the Spring 2 quilting, my flower. And then here's the yellow one, and I did that one with the geometric design. And then the third block was the pink, and I did that again with the Spring 2. So those are all 3 done, and we're going to trim all of our blocks now. So I am going to show you how to do, there's some little leaves for these flower blocks, and we will do those in one of the other videos. So, so this one's going a little long just because we had to talk about, cutting and all that too. So, okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to take a look. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy with this is all getting all dry now. And I think my chenille looks good, and I really like that fringe method with that wash away thread, because the back, after I got the little kind of the little gooey stuff off, and I took it off my finger, and boy, it sure made a nice, really came out nicely, and all of it's nice and loopy, and it's not all cut. So that's a really cool idea. So I think I'm going to be trying that again. All right, so we need to cut this block first. So this block is, let's see, this block is 6.5 by 6.5, and we're going to use our 6.5 by 6.5 inch orange pop ruler. So this one, it told us to go ahead and center this, and so it left about 1/4 inch at the bottom, and that's what it's showing, is that there's 1/4 inch at the bottom of the little watering can. So I've got my 6.5 by 6.5 inch ruler, and I can use my basting line, here to help me get this lined up. So I'm going to line this up with my basting lines and get it fairly centered, side to side and up and down. And then I'm going to, let's move this down a little bit. Then I'm going to put my bigger ruler. This is the 8.5 by 8.5 on. That just gives me something a little bit better to grab onto. So I like to put the larger one on. So these are square ones. So yeah, it looks pretty good. I think I'm going to really like that block. And then we're going to go ahead and let me get my camera turned up just a little bit for you. There we go. Now I've got my Martelli mat and my Martelli rotary cutter, and I'm going to slide this. These are the orange pop rulers, and if you don't have these are awesome, because they sure help with all this cutting, because we do a lot of cutting in these Kimberbell projects. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up. I'm going to turn this. I'm left-handed, so I'm holding my rotary cutter in my left hand. I'm going to kind of turn it, and I'm going to start over here on the right, okay? And I like to start in a little bit from the corner, and then I push back into the corner and go forward. I'm going to turn my Martelli mat. This is a roundabout. These are the most awesome rotating mats because they actually rotate. I've had a lot. I've had 2 or 3 different ones, and I've gotten rid of them because they don't actually rotate. And back and forward. Okay, so let's see how we did here. So that one is 6.5 by 6.5. Oh my gosh, isn't that cute? I'm just very pleased with the way that turned out. And these are getting all dry now. My little chenille is just a little bit wet yet, but it's doing pretty well. So I think I'm about done with that one. And we'll just let it dry. I'm going to leave it out so it'll dry tonight. And I think that's adorable. I love that. And then now the other three, let me get to that page. I believe they're going to be cut at 4.5 inches. Yes, so we're going to get, I've got my 6.5 inch ruler here. And let me find my 4.5 inch one. It's here somewhere. Here it is. So we're going to trim our little blocks. And again, there's a 4.5 inch like basting line around the outside edge. So that will help us to cut and get this lined up. So I'm going to use that line to help me get it kind of centered like that. And then I'm going to slip my 6.5 inch one over the top. And I'm going to do the same thing this with, I'm going to kind of turn it towards me. If you're right-handed, you're going to turn the other way. And remember, we're cutting on the inside of these. So I'm just going to kind of start up a little bit and pull back into the corner and push forward. My blade needs to be replaced. So I'm a little bit, kind of scooted it a little bit. There we go. So do this side. My blade's a little dull, so I have to push a little harder than normal. I'll get a new blade before the next video. And pull back and push forward. All right, so that one is now trimmed at 4.5. Got a little spot here that didn't cut, so where that little seam is. There we go. So there is one of our flower blocks. Let's go ahead and do the other two here. This out of the way. We're going to use the 4.5 inch ruler for this one too. Get it all lined up. These orange pop rulers, at first I thought, oh, I don't need those. I can just square them up. But you know, these sure are easy because then you can see what you're doing. You know, you can see the middle of it and you don't have to try to figure out how to. Just a second, I got a piece of fabric stuck in there. You don't have to try to get it through the ruler and get it lined up. And I was always having things move on me. I really like these. And there's like little grippers that they send with these that they go on the inside, on the backs of them. And they're like little round rubber grippers. And they really work nicely for them to stay put. Of course, then I moved it for you. I'm getting tired. It's time to quit for the night. This is kind of an evening thing. And I'm getting tired. So it's time to quit for the night. I can always tell when it's time to quit. Then I can't hang on to anything or anything. So let me check these little spots that didn't cut here. Sorry. My blade is pretty dull. So we'll get a new one before I do the next video. Get these little thick spots. It just doesn't like. There we go. So there's the blue one. Got the blue one. Got the yellow one. And then I'm going to do one more. And we'll be done with the first video and the first 4 blocks. And then we'll move on to some more because there's about 10 blocks in this pillow, and there were a few little filler blocks too. So we'll kind of do those with the we have to do some quilting on those, but we'll do those with like the flanges and the borders. So we won't have to do those with. We'll kind of do those as we're doing the outside edges. All right, so get this one. 4.5 inch orange pop ruler. All right, one more. Let's see if it cut. Did pretty well. It's just those little thick spots there. I don't want to cut. There we go. So there's my 3 little flower blocks, all pieced and quilted. I just love that. And then the, whoops, it fell down here. So here's my little watering can. I really like, so we're going to do some more fringe. So we'll do that fringe method again. I really like that. I've got just one little tail that needs to be trimmed, but I just love it because it's all loopy. Looks very nice. And it looks nice in the back too. So I'm very happy with that method. I think I'll keep using that. I do really like it. So, all right. So next In the next video, we are going to be doing the Dresden flower, the mushrooms, and the Life is Better in full bloom blocks. We're going to do 3 blocks in the next video. And in the last block video, we'll end up doing like 5 videos for this pillow, because it's actually got quite a few pieces in it. So, all right, so I'll see you for the next video, and we'll do the Dresden flower, the mushrooms, and the Life is Better in full bloom blocks. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed making your 4 blocks. Thank you, everybody.